You're listening to Punisher Waterfowls, the Union 0430 podcast. Brought to you by Real Geese Decoys, the most technologically advanced silhouette decoy on the market. First Light, the best hunting gear on the planet. Go farther, stay longer. And Ducklander Calls. Tradition, education, and quality. Built to hunt.
Punisher Waterfowls The Refuge is presented by Quick Koys, the fastest deployable, most portable, lifelike motion decoy product ever invented for duck hunters.
Hey everybody, this is Kyle Smock with Show Me Ducks, a proud sponsor of Punisher Waterfowls The Refuge this March at the Toronto Sportsman Show. Come check us out in the Refuge to see the Deep Diver 2.0, the Ice Quacker, and the Mini Quacker.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Union 0430 podcast. We are at episode 209, and we got Ryan Preuss from EZ Dekes joining us tonight. So it's going to be a great show, and we're going to get into everything EZ Dekes here in a minute. But like I always do at the beginning of every show, I'd like to take a chance to thank our sponsors of Real Geese, First Light, and Ducklander Calls, who've been with us right from pretty much the beginning and have always been so supportive of us. So I wanted to give a big shout out to them. And of course, the voice of the Union 0430, Captain Jeff Coates from Pit Boss Waterfowl. So, and
Jeffrey, you'll be glad to know this episode is brought to you by Crown Royal.
Well, I got my new EZ Dekes t-shirt on tonight, and I thought,
dapper.
And I thought, well, you know what? I'm wearing my EZ Dekes t-shirt. May as well put on an East Coast hat too. So represent the saltwater boys. And I want to get more into that, but this whole saltwater hunting, I don't think people realize just how harsh that is on your gear. And we're going to get into it with Ryan, because that's why he created what he created, because of the harshness of the salt water. But anyways, Ryan, buddy, thanks for coming on. It's been a while since we've chatted really on the show. It was back to the 200th episode. So it was, 3 months ago at least, when you were on for the 200th episode. So what's new and exciting since then?
Life has been in fast forward. You say 3 months, it's like it was yesterday.
I know.
It's been nonstop, but hunting season's finally here in New York.
Yep.
So, I mean, I'm excited to go out hunting tomorrow, and just get out and do it. The lead up to it is always, it seems like it's the whole year,
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. That's the thing with, I met some fellas this fall that were, there was 2 of them that were brand new to waterfowl hunting, right? And after a couple of days, they were like, this is kind of fun. And I said, well, you're screwed now. And they were like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, I said, this is the way life is going to be for you now. I said, you're not going to have any money in your bank account. I said, because you're going to be spending it on gear all the time. I said, all season long, all you're going to be doing is thinking about the next hunt. And then when the season's over, all you're doing is prepping for the next season so that you're ready to hunt again. I said, it's 365 days out of the year. And you just, alluded to that with that statement of saying, it's a long time coming. Finally, it's here, especially for you guys south of the border. I feel bad for you, as all of you guys that are, in the States, because you see us hunting, right from, the 3rd week of September. We started hunting, and now here it is, the end of November, and you're just starting to get out now.
And we have the full federal limit of days too.
Oh yeah.
Like our season was 107 days. We're like
something like
a lot
that.
of boys
Yeah.
down south. It's 60.
Yeah. With a split in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a split, Ryan?
We have, this year's a little strange because Thanksgiving is actually kind of pushed back a week.
Okay.
Or at least that's what everyone's saying. that it seems later. But we have a week, so we open up the Saturday before Thanksgiving, and we run the whole week of Thanksgiving till the
Yep.
Sunday, and
Yep.
then we shut down from that Sunday. Last year, it wound up having a weekend in between, just because of how the dates fell.
Okay.
But this year we have Monday through Friday is going to be off, and then Saturday we're back up. So December 7th we start shooting again.
Okay.
It's a
So
really short split, but it is a split.
yeah, we sort
So,
of do something like that when it comes to our conservation goose hunt, right? Our early season goose hunt where our bag limit is up to 10 birds a day. That's for a week, and then we stop for a week where there's no hunting, and then the following week everything opens, ducks and
well,
geese opened.
that's in Southern Ontario.
That's in Southern Ontario. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
So the way we work, Ryan, like Ontario is split into 4 sections, and every Saturday is a new opener as you work your way from like the top end of the province southward. So the southern zone, which is primarily where Craig, Damien, and I hunt, we're the last Saturday in September. The zone above that's the third Saturday, the second Saturday, and the first Saturday as you go further north. But obviously, way up northern Ontario, I think everything's up there is frozen, locked tight now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we kind of get that. The nice thing about New York is they break it up kind of similar. So upstate New York, Lake Champlain, Western, Central, you have all these different zones that open up. So if you have friends or if you know public places up there, I mean, you can hunt, you can get more than your allotted, say, 60 days that we technically have down here on Long Island. Also, Long Island itself, with our early season goose. Now, granted, this year was a little warm, so we didn't have the group population that we probably normally have. But it's really to try to thin out those local birds that never leave, that are on the baseball field and soccer fields and everything. But that goes from early September and runs all the way to the end of middle of February. Actually, we can
Oh,
shoot
really?
these. Yeah, so we do have some opportunity, but like everywhere, weather, right? Like you hear all these guys complaining on social media, and we get a lot of guys here on Long Island that complain about the split. They don't want the Thanksgiving split. They'd rather run the whole length of December or run even later.
Yeah.
But I know that's obviously not, something that's always possible to do based off of the regulations, I guess, federal regulations.
Well, you bring up a good point there because that's something I'm hearing here just and again, my little piece of earth here. But that's something I'm hearing here is that people are starting to ask, can we push our season to the right a little bit? Because, listen, without going down a whole rabbit hole, we do know that the climate is changing, right? So here we are, the end of November, nothing's frozen up yet. I know it's only a week away, 2 weeks away, and then we could be froze up, but the climate is changing, and we're seeing birds acting not the way that we had always thought birds would act and stuff. So, there is something to be said, and I understand fully that when it comes to government and changing regulation and changing legislature, that it can be quite difficult. But I would be really interested to know the science, like what are the biologists noticing with regard to harvesting birds and birds moving. Like I can tell you that this year I was told through a friend that this is the latest migration in 40 years. So, maybe that's something, maybe that's a discussion that needs to be had with the government and the ministries and fish and game and all these people that make the decisions is, maybe we should look at pushing the seasons to the right a little bit. And at the end of the day, for us, our hunting gets better as the season goes on. The only problem is you have that fear of everything freezing up and then, birds just fly right over and continue on south, right?
for
Kind of
sure.
like when everybody gets into the argument about the late season here, right? For
Yeah,
Sunday gun hunting or non-Sunday gun hunting. So in some areas in Ontario, some townships don't have Sunday gun hunting. So then they get a later goose season in
that's
what's it,
right.
end of February.
Yeah,
So a lot of times the push is to get Sunday gun hunting in all the townships. But then if that happens, then you lose that late season at the end of February.
that's right.
Um, which is a problem down, like if you get down along Lake Erie or Lake Ontario, but like
Oh,
up where I am,
that's one thing I'm struggling with right now.
yeah. And it's like for where I am, so we had one township or two townships around me that were still holding out and weren't allowing Sunday gun hunting. One now has allowed it, which means there will be no late season. But up here in February, you're not shooting any geese anyways. Like
Yeah,
there's no fields because it's all buried in snow. There's no
yeah,
water because everything's iced up. So it's one of those things where it's just which way do you go, right?
yeah.
Do you
But
appease?
Philly, sorry, Craig, but Philly, you
Oh,
do have water in February, right?
Oh yeah, so for reference for you, Ryan. So I'm about 45 minutes northeast of Toronto. So you have Toronto itself, and then to the east of Toronto is Durham region, which is number of other small towns and stuff. All those towns border Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario never freezes, and we've got a nuclear plant in the first town. As soon as you get out of Toronto, you got a nuke plant there, and then there's another nuke plant, what, 25 minutes down the highway at the far end of Durham region. Well, both those nuclear plants have warm water discharges, which pump warm water into Lake Ontario around those two plants. So, like Lake Ontario, regardless of the plants, Lake Ontario never freezes. So we get all those resident birds, like you mentioned, the golf course birds, the park birds, whatever else. They never migrate. And if they do migrate, they're migrating about 10 miles,
Yeah.
if you're lucky. So they pile up on Lake Ontario. Well, all of the north end of Durham region and out towards the east is all agriculture. So these birds do nothing but feed and make more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the two towns that I've got fields in, one's got Sunday gun hunting, one doesn't. So I get a late goose season at the end of February for a week on one side of the road and not on the other. Well, like it's nothing to go, and Damien's been to one of these properties. It's nothing to go out in the morning and see 1,500, 2,000 Canadas. But because of this whole Sunday gun hunting nonsense, because obviously it's catering to like the Monday to Friday folk, I can't go out there in like February and smash piles of Canadas.
Right.
You can on the other side of the road.
Hmm?
Or were you being a little sarcastic there, or is it literally on one side of the road you can, one side of the road you can't?
Well, it's like little like the dividing line between this town and that town.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that up here. It's kind of crazy with some of our regs on Long Island. So they break.
You got to draw the boundary somewhere, right?
Yeah, but it's sometimes interesting because we have a similar situation, where the geese all roost and is it where they have a limit of say 15, and then 2 miles up the road and across the highway where the farm field is, you're only allowed 2.
Yeah.
So
Really?
if you hunted the roost, you'd be able to shoot 15, but you're not going to do that. So you go hunt the farm field and you only get 2. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
And a little frustrating too.
Yeah, I bet. So with and I don't want to sound like I'm being totally ignorant here, Ryan, and because what I've learned in the 208 episodes of this show that we've done is my idea of great spots to duck hunt in the United States. I really did not have a clue, because I just always thought it was in the South. But you're up in, yeah, and I know you hunt Long Island and the whole bit, and there is that history of the Eastern Seaboard when it comes to sea ducks and the whole hunting. But how is, what's the pressure like hunter wise, where you are? Like, is there a lot of pressure of fellas coming out and hunting around your area?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Depending on where you go, right? South Shore of Long Island has a very rich history and of duck hunting, and there's a lot of guys.
yeah,
Here on the North Shore, I think there's a little bit smaller of a population of guys, and it's because it's a little bit different, right? So the North Shore is going to be sandy, shallow marshes, salt marshes. On the North Shore, you're going to have more cliffs, you're going to have rocks. It's a completely different environment, right?
yeah.
Bayside and then ocean side. So you get a lot of different kind of variety of ducks, and I think a lot of guys for years are used to hunting the South Shore. I hunt strictly or most of the time on the North Shore of the island, moving between about 4 different harbors. And kind of depending on where the birds are, but the group of guys that we have on the North Shore seem to be a good group of guys that all do a good job communicating.
Yeah.
So it's not a race to the ramp. Believe me, we still get up early, but you're not uberly concerned of having 10 guys try to get to one spot.
Okay.
But I mean, this morning, Thanksgiving morning, southeast wind. The harbor is going to protect it. You're not going to be dealing with heavy chop or rough seas. But we did have rain, and I was the second boat in. There was 5 boats in altogether, right on one side of the harbor. But there weren't any birds around, so it didn't really matter. But
Right.
but it can be. It can get better yet when
Competitive.
it's colder. There's going to be a lot more guys that come out, and we're starting to see some guys. And it might be my fault a little bit. I'll take ownership of it because of EZ Dekes growing. We're seeing a shift of some guys from Nassau County and Queens, the city, Brooklyn, actually coming out further out
Really?
east and trying to hunt some of these spots.
So
Wow.
without giving out spots, Ryan, because I'm like literally on Apple Maps right now, checking out Long Island and stuff. But like, where the hell do you hunt? There's so many houses.
Those houses are right behind us when we hunt.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm like going through here and I'm like, there's just so much waterfront property. Like there is the odd spot here and there where like it's totally like uninhabited and whatever, but I'm like, there's a lot of like residential.
it's all their homes up on most of the area, especially on the North Shore. You'll have a home. You have to be below that tide line to
Right.
be legal, right?
Well, that's the
Um,
other thing you have to deal with is freaking tides.
yeah,
That's different.
that's a nightmare in itself. But when you're hunting, if I'm facing out over the bay, I have to have 500 feet technically in front of me that's free and clear, so open
Okay.
water.
Yeah.
But I could have a house 50 feet behind me, and I'm completely legal.
Okay. So like we've got our standard federal discharge rules, which is like you got to be at least 8 meters from a road. So what's 8 meters? End up by 3, like 25,
27.
20. Yeah, 20. You got to be 27 feet from a road, and you can't discharge towards the road, which makes sense. Now, a lot of like the different townships and municipalities, they'll impart something where you have to be like, say, 50 meters from the road or 300 meters from a school, a house, place of worship. Unless you're hunting the property where a house exists, then that 300-meter rule is null and void because like you're hunting that property. But like, there might be houses running up down the side of the concession where you are or something like that.
Rules schmools.
Right?
Well, that's the big thing. Just because, and we talk about this on our local Facebook pages, Long Island pages, because you'll hear like the Long Island community, I think in general would prefer us not hunting, right? I think if they had the ability to do it, they would kill it immediately. Because the minute the season starts, it's all over the Facebook groups and whatnot. Just because it's legal doesn't mean you should hunt it.
Right. Yeah.
So I have multiple spots that I hunt only on certain winds on certain days. And normally it's like snow, heavy rain, heavy
Oh, yeah.
wind, where I know that the homeowner is going to be stuck in their houses. They're not going to be out walking their dogs.
Yeah.
You hunt certain spots Monday through Friday, not on Saturday and Sunday. You got to pick your battles because as much as you're right, like we always get into this online. It's like, as much as you're right, you can hunt it. You gotta be. I live in the town that I hunt in. I wear my gear when I'm hunting, and it's on the back of my truck. I don't want to come out at Stop and Shop or my grocery store and have my car keyed because I hunted behind some guy's house. So
Yeah.
just because we're allowed to do it doesn't mean we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there's a lot of opportunity, and there's a lot of open marsh in the middle of those bays that if you're looking,
Okay.
you know, um, but you gotta pick your battles. Like I just did an article on with Wildfowl, and we were talking about, I spend my time looking and combing through those aerial maps, trying to find those freshwater springs or those areas where you talk about power plants and things like that, where that water isn't going to freeze up, or in the right wind, that's where the birds are going to set up because it's out of the wind, or because of the tide, there's still water there. They're not in the mud, right? But then you see like, hey, there's a house right there. And the last thing I want to deal with is a homeowner yelling at me in the middle of
Yeah.
one.
Well, it's funny because I literally had a half-hour conversation with a buddy last night after we got off recording about where he's going to go out hunting and his rig and the winds and stuff he's getting. I'm like, dude, I literally spend half my life on Apple Maps and Google Earth looking at satellite imagery. Okay, I'm gonna hunt. And like I'm into the whole kayak thing right now. So I got just a little piddly ass 12-foot plastic boat. Like, but you're looking at the weather and the wind and like where he was going to go out, like he was concerned that this weekend there's like 30, 40K winds. I'm like, well, dude, well, that's a huge west wind. And you hunt like this shore, you're totally protected. Like it's an offshore wind. Like so there's no room for the wind to build up and you're not going to get rollers at the ramp. Like you probably got a decent buffer to get out, getting around where you need to go and set up. And like where he's hunting the houses and all that other jazz is like not an issue, but like using your satellite imagery and stuff is huge. And like especially with Google Maps, because you can do measurements. Okay, I want to hunt here. Well, I see there's a house or a cottage. How far is it from point A to point B? Like there's so many tools like that right at your fingertips
Oh
that
yeah.
you can use to your advantage, right?
And I use a similar tool, one of the hunting apps. It's technically designed for deer hunting, but it is when I sit and I just the same thing. I go through at night and I pin things, and then I'll drive it and go see. But the other big thing for us, because it's tidal, I got to know what the bottom looks like, and I
Yeah.
have to know what the bottom feels like. Certain areas, the silt, I mean, it will swallow you up.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it's 6 inches of water, 6 feet of mud.
Oh yeah, and actually, the more water that's on it, the more compact it is, the harder it is. So you think like, oh, it's dry, like oh, there's no water on top. Let me walk across this, and then all of a sudden you're up to your hip. You're like, oh
Yeah.
no.
Bad
Yeah,
decision.
that's like the lake that I live on in my town. Like that's like all the great duck hunting spots. You ain't waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we call it loon shit. Ryan, buddy, I've got you on, and obviously we didn't get a chance during the 200th episode to really dive into EZ Dekes and everything that there is about EZ Dekes, and that was a lot of the reason why I wanted you to come on the show, because obviously I use your product. I know Phil uses your product. It's only a matter of time before Craig starts using your product. But we had done a show, we had done a recording last night, Phil and I, with another guy, and we had talked about it, and both Phil and I had said, it's a lot of fun when we can do this show and we can bring on people that we know, and in your case, we've actually met because we met in Baton Rouge and got to chat face to face. it's pretty cool when you can do this show and you can bring somebody on that has a product. First off, you can sit down and talk to them about duck hunting, but then they have a product. They have their own brand, their own small business, and you're trying to help them grow. Now, with that being said, I don't know how much growth you will get from us, but that's the fun part about this is that we like to be able to help out where we can. So very long-winded way to say, listen, we need to start talking about EZ Dekes and start getting some exposure to you on this show here, and hopefully blow up your bank account so that you're filthy rich, and then you own a duck club down on Long Island, and you start inviting us to come down.
I don't know if I would set up the duck club on Long Island. I might move out in the middle of the country, but
well,
start flooding corn.
Yeah, but if you notice, you see how I do that? I say we're doing stuff to help you, and then bam, this is our reward. You buy a duck club and you invite us to come.
I don't need a duck club for you guys to come down and hunt.
I know.
You're welcome to come anytime. We talked about that in Baton Rouge.
I know.
Long Island's a different animal, like you kind of alluded to earlier. Like you don't really think of it as a duck destination.
Mm-hmm.
Not whatsoever.
But yeah, no, and most people don't. We've been doing this for 7 years now. We're going on. Realistically, we started in 2020 as a business, but the first few years, people are like, "You duck hunt out on Long Island?" Because they think in New York City, right? So
yeah, of course.
Long Island's a very long island with a ton of coastline and a ton of different habitat and a lot of variety in birds. We don't get the numbers that they get out in the Central or Mississippi Flyway.
Of course.
But, if the weather's right, we talked about earlier about how this is the latest migration. When it gets cold, birds start coming here, and they come down through the eastern side of the Atlantic Flyway or down the Hudson, and they hit Long Island and they get to the South Shore, kind of what we were talking about earlier, and they ain't going to go over the ocean to get to North Carolina. So they either got to go back and hang a right and start heading west, and then get down to the city, get over to Jersey, and then keep going, or they just stay here for the winter.
Right.
So, if we get a nice push next week of cold weather, there's going to be some birds down here. And if you want to shoot black duck, you want to shoot Atlantic brant, Long Island's a honey hole for that.
Oh, I'd love to shoot a brant.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at yesterday, I had about 1,000 of them behind my spread, and technically brant isn't open till the end of December. So we were trying to figure out how to get them away from our spread so that if we did have a black duck or a mallard come in, that we could actually shoot.
Right.
Because technically, if they're within that 500 feet from you and your spread and you shoot, and the DECs behind you, our conservation officers behind you, you're getting a ticket.
Yeah.
Because God forbid that bird gets any spray and you're not going to be aiming on him, he's going to drop.
You know it.
Yeah.
Over birds. So yesterday we were standing up trying to spook them out and get them, and we would push them out and they'd come right back in.
Really, I
was hunting over 2 decoys. It's like,
wow.
what's going on?
Wow. The thing that I love about this whole idea of the Northeast, and I'm sure the Pacific Northwest is the same way. Actually, I'm not sure. I'd have to ask somebody that actually hunts the Pacific Northwest, the salt water.
Greg Taylor.
Yeah, but I don't know if Greg is hunting the salt water. He's hunting.
He's out that direction.
Yeah, but he's hunting the interior, right?
Well, he's a shit ton closer to salt water than you and I.
Yeah. But Ryan, you had talked about it, like when I asked about how much pressure do you have, and we're getting off topic from the EZ Dekes again, but I did want to talk about this because it really it sort of grabbed my interest, because you had said as it gets colder, you're going to start seeing more hunters out, which is somewhat different than where I am, because as it gets colder, the majority of the hunters, they're not chasing ducks anymore. They're
So,
done. Once it gets so cold, the last thing they're doing is going out on big water, chasing ducks. So, when you say as it gets colder, we'll be about to see a lot more hunters, and that's because obviously a lot more birds is coming down, and you are dealing with big open water, right? But it's pretty cool to hear you say that, and just how fanatical those hunters have to be, because listen, I grew up on the North Atlantic, and really you're not that far from where I was. I don't think there's that much indifference in the climate really when it comes to the wintertime. So you you want to have your wits about you out on that water. And I know you and I talked about it in Baton Rouge about you being out on the water, and your wife, she chimed in as well. And it was quite funny. But with regards to these hunters, like you've got to be just a different breed of hunter to be on that big water in that late season. I would think.
I think a lot of the guys also, just because there's not heavy bird you know populations down, or the numbers better yet, a lot of guys are still deer hunting or
Yeah.
chasing, our striped bass, our albacore run that's going on the South Shore. So there's a lot of guys, there's a lot of things to still do. Fish. They
Yeah.
just open up our fall turkey season that normally opens up. So like this first split beginning of the season, you get a lot of guys that kind of hold off. I have like 4 or 5 buddies that are diehards they didn't even hunt this week.
Right.
Like, hey, no, there's not enough around. It's not even worth it. I'm not going to, make my wife upset. I'll help out with the kids. I'll get the Christmas tree up. I'll get the Christmas lights done, kind of get their honeydew
Yep.
list done
Yep.
before the real kind of heart of the season kicks off. But yeah, no, I think you get, when you're hunting on Long Island Sound or even the South Shore, the Long Island Sound's a little bit different of an animal because our tide swings are so different. So
Hmm.
our tide swings can be anywhere from 6 to 8 feet. Moon tide's even more than that. On the South Shore, it's smaller, like maybe 2 to 4, depending on the bay and the cove. The water is still big, but you're on the North Shore. Especially when you're going out sea duck hunting, open water, you got a lot to think about: wind direction, tide, high tide, low tide, wind against tide. All these other extra factors that go into it. So I think a lot of guys, if you're going to go out there and kind of risk it all, you want it to be worth it, right? So
Yeah.
I think a lot of guys kind of hold off, and they kind of just wait till it's technically in their mind worth going out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it, buddy. I totally get it. Listen, I'm gonna try and stay on the topic of EZ Dekes now.
good
So
luck and Godspeed.
yeah, good luck,
We'll get
bud.
there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. No, you know, one of the coolest things, and we had talked about it last night again when we had done this show, when we had done the recording last night, Phil, and we had talked about how um waterfowl hunters are some of the more creative people or creative hunters in the whole hunting world. And I'm not taking anything away from all of the inventions for deer hunters and turkey hunters and fishermen and all of that stuff. And I'm really not. And I'm not throwing shade on it. But when it comes to duck hunters, the innovation that people come up with, and then another company will come along and say, well, that's a great product, but that doesn't work for me in my current environment. So I'm going to make some changes to make it work for me, which is, Austin Coyle done with his dog vest. And that's what you done, Ryan, with your own rigging with Easy Deeks, is because if you're using the stuff that you're buying off the shelf right now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're buying the stuff off the shelf, off the big box stores, that's not lasting in the salt water. So you had to pretty much create a product that could last in the salt water. Am I right?
Well, it's not even that I reinvented the wheel. It wasn't. It's never been about that. I mean, I think I've talked to you about this in the past. This was never even. I didn't do this to start a business.
Right.
It was never about that. It's never been about the money. I mean, I joke around all the time. If it was about the money, I would go flip burgers at McDonald's.
Yeah.
I mean, that would make more sense for my time. It's about creating a product that actually does what it says it's going to do. And I grew up offshore fishing, so
Yep.
my entire life has always been saltwater fishing.
Hmm.
Um, Prior to ever starting EZ Dekes, prior to ever getting involved in duck hunting, um, I that's what I did. I saltwater fished competitively. My buddies that are on Team Shimano, blah blah blah, you name it. They fish all the big tournaments in Florida, the Bahamas, all kinds of stuff. So like that's where kind of my experience comes from. When I got into duck hunting later on in life, um, I realized really quickly that the stuff that's being built is being designed for the guys in the middle of the country, the
Right.
guys that are hunting over brackish water, freshwater. They're not worried about something that's going to literally eat the metal, crimp every time it goes in the water. I mean, there's a reason you put zincs on a boat. I mean,
Hmm.
saltwater attacks metal. So I took what we use for offshore fishing, tuna fishing, shark fishing. I used that material to build my first set of rigs. And it was strictly built because I was tired of the shit falling apart.
Yeah.
I was tired of watching my decoys float away because they're not designed long enough because these guys aren't hunting tidal. I mean, I have spots that I hunt black duck in that when I get in the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, it could be high tide, it could be 10 feet. By the end of my hunt, and when the birds are starting to really come in, it could be, shin deep, right? But I don't want to deal with those decoys. I hate getting out of the boat and moving stuff around. So I
Hmm.
want to put them in the water and let that tide drop out, or vice versa, let that tide come back in.
Yeah.
So I got sick and tired of having to chase decoys, tired of crimps breaking, lead snapping. You know, the products on the market. There's a reason they're able to have it at a price point at the big box stores. There's a reason, and I'm probably getting myself in trouble a little bit right now, but there's a reason some brands are able to do 40 or 50, 60% off for Black Friday, holiday
Yeah.
specials.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you got to question how much does that product actually cost to get made? Okay. Everyone's making their piece. How much is the material? You
Yeah.
know, I can tell you right now, when you guys and Phil, when you're using the products and you look at it, it's robust, it's bulked up, it's designed to take a beating.
Over
It's
engineered.
exactly. And a lot of people are like, well, it's too much. In my mind, there's no such thing. And I actually have a guy out in Utah, saltwater,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Who he wrote me the other day, and I'm going to post this soon on social media. And he's like, dude, I don't need to buy any more rigs from you. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, how is this a business? Like, I'm used to buying 2 or 3 dozen rigs a year to replace the ones that break every year.
Right.
And I wrote him back and I said, Justin, I've never started this business to look at you as a consumer. I want to give you a product that you love, that you have, that you can hand down to your grandkids. And I know it's kind of silly that it's decoy rigging, but
Yeah.
let's be honest. When you're freezing your ass off, when you're cleaning up or breaking down, and the shit's a mess or it's tangled, it's a nightmare. So it in my mind, it ruins that entire experience of hunting. You know, that's normally when you get into arguments with your partner over something that they did, they put them away wrong, they wrapped them wrong, whatever the case may be. And
More
then,
importantly, they wrap them.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Oh, you want to see someone lose their shit?
I know a few guys that are like that.
You don't wrap Texas rigs. No.
Well,
in my personal opinion, you should never buy a rig that you have to wrap.
Like, I understand some people run like the cords and they got like the bungee and the J hook. Those work great. You do not wrap Texas rigs.
Sort of kind of defeats the purpose of buying a Texas rig if you're wrapping it, right?
Yeah, we had an instance a few years ago, and that's since been rectified.
There you go.
Someone got their PP spanked.
No,
Don't touch my fucking decoys. You just sit in the front of the boat.
you said look pretty.
Yeah, you just keep the dog company.
No, but Ryan, like, you touched on something that'll really just show, in my opinion, it shows how humble you are, right? And that you're not just saying it for the sake of saying it. That, listen, I'm not here to make a pile of money. I just want to be able to put a good product out there that people are happy with. Because that gentleman in Utah and hunting Salt Lake, yeah, like that's the worst customer that you can have, because, well, now I don't need to buy any more rigs, so he's not going to be a returning customer. But so what I'm getting at with that is that some people will say, well, this is a poor business model because you make something so good that people don't need to come back and rebuy it. That's not the thing. I think that the way you're looking at it, and this is the way I would look at it, is that, hey, listen, if Justin is happy and he's saying, listen, I got buy these rigs and I'll never have to buy, guess what he's doing the next time he bumps into somebody and they say, oh, what are you using for rigging?
He's
the same
bragging
rigs
to his friends.
Absolutely. The same rigs I've been using for 4 years. What?
Yeah.
How are you using the same rigs for 4 years in this water? You know what I mean? So, dude, to be able to create a product that's good enough that people are writing you to say, oh, well, I guess that's the last time I need to buy that. That's got to be a huge pat on the back to you, because when you say you set out to create a good product, you're not going to get much better validation than someone saying, well, they're good and they're good enough that I'll never have to buy anything again. So that's got to be a huge pat on the back to you, buddy. So congratulations on that.
I appreciate that. I will say though, I wrote back to him. I said, Justin, you got to tell all your buddies.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on that. And two, you're not done buying decoys. So don't tell me you're done buying decoys.
The spread can always be bigger.
I think one of the biggest things, Ryan, that sets you apart from everyone else is your diversity of product. So you've got like 3 different colors of mono. You got the clear, the green, the black. You've got the coated wire. You've got your Texas rigs and your timber rigs. Your Texas rigs are like the mushroom style, whereas your timber rigs are more like that teardrop style. So it doesn't accumulate weeds, which drives me effing crazy. And it's like, okay, so what style weight do you want? What weight do you want? What color of string do you want? What length of string do you want? Like, your product like covers so many like bases. Like, my biggest thing is I've always wanted 36-inch 3-ounce weights, which is like next to impossible to try to find. Where it's like, do you want 18-inch? Do you want 24-inch? Do you want 30? Do you want 36? Do you want 48? Do you want 60? Like, you cover such a broad range of like applications for guys. Like, I hunt a lot of skinny water. I don't want 48s. They're too long. It's just more shit to deal with in the kayak and the boat, whatever else. Yeah, see, there we go. There's mine right there.
That's yours right here, Phil. And these are mine.
Whereas, like, I was running another brand prior to, and like, they're just absolute weed magnets. Great for moving water if you're hunting like rivers and stuff. They grab, they hold. That's awesome. I don't do that. I hunt skinny water. I hunt still water. So I don't need a big honkin' raging Texas rig. I want something like 36 inches is absolute perfect. Because there's a lot of places where I'm only hunting like a foot of water. Like, yeah, there's a couple feet of mud. So like, if there's any current by any means, these weights are going to hook onto what minimum weeds are there, or they'll suck into the mud. But decoys ain't drifting away. Like, you have hammered that niche of be like, what do you want? you don't cover like, this kind of narrow spectrum. You've hammered it out like so wide. And I think that's what separates you so greatly from even like these like huge manufacturers that are, mass producing weights and stuff. Like,
Well, they could never do it, right? I mean, so it's it's a blessing and a curse, right? So I given everyone the opportunity to really kind of, like you said, dial in their configuration to their environment. And to me, going back to like it's just starting EZ Dekes and really kind of growing this, that's been the coolest part. Is talking to guys like you guys in a different part. I didn't mean, let's be honest, I never would have had a conversation with the three of you if I didn't start EZ Dekes, right? Probably never
That's
would have
right.
bumped into you.
That's right.
I probably wouldn't be even on social media if it wasn't for EZ Dekes. But the reality is that I'm learning about all these different styles of hunting, and that's kind of how the timber rig came about. After the first year of Arkansas, I was having a conversation with one of the big guide services down in Louisiana, and we were talking about different weight styles. And I came home and I created the timber rig. Hindsight 2020, I wish I named it more of like a agricultural field or vegetation, some other name than timber, because it really is designed for your flooded fields, your anywhere where there's, grass, roots, weeds, whatever the case may be on the bottom, so that hard edge doesn't get caught on it. To your point, Phil, of holding on to that vegetation on a
and like you drag all that shit into your boat, whether you're running a boat, kayak,
canoe,
all that crap comes with you.
Oh, better yet, you gotta rinse that all off before you go to the next hunting hole.
Yeah.
Ryan,
I did want to, and I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence that's listening to the show, but in your own words, and I know you and Phil sort of kind of touched on it a little bit already, but in your own words, can you explain the difference between a Texas rig and a timber rig? And the reason why I say it is because I see and I hear a lot of people saying, well, I only like Texas rigs. But why do you only like Texas rigs? Like, what's the reason? Is it just because that's the term and that's a default for you? And I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but can you, because it may change some people's mind and what they're looking for, because I don't know if people know there's different applications.
I mean, I think it's kind of funny, real quick, to tell a quick story. Down in Easton, Maryland at the Waterfowl Festival, the beginning of November. And I honestly thought I was being punked. The guy walks over and he goes, "What's a Texas rig?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, it's a style of decoy rigging. It's pretty popular. It's a popular name. A lot of big brands offer the same with this name." He goes, "Well, I'm from Texas." And I smile at him and he goes, "We just call them rigs." And I was like, "Is that a joke? Like, are you?" And he's like, "Dude, I'm not messing with you at all." He's like, "Never heard the term Texas rig."
Really?
Texas rig came around. I think it was one of the other big brands. I mean, if it's I'm right, if it's Tangle Free, if it's Lifetime, Heyday, who knows who was the one that named it a Texas rig. Technically, all the decoy rigging styles on the market aren't really what a Texas rig is from a fishing perspective, right? So where did the name come from? I couldn't tell you that. But that's that again. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I think I just created a better mousetrap. Or built a better one. But how I break the two up from timber and Texas is simple. My Texas rig, first and foremost, all of my rigging is a stationary fixed weight. So the weight is fixed at the bottom of the rig,
which is what I love.
I could go into why the weight should not slide up and down the rig all day long, but I won't bore you guys with my opinion on that. But Texas rig, timber rig, the difference between the two is Texas rig is a fixed mushroom style weight. If you could hold that up, Damien, I don't know if you still have that.
No, I do. Just a sec, buddy. Sorry, just a sec.
And no worries.
Damien's got it all buggered up.
Well, no, because I ordered heavy weights and super long lines. So when I put it back, obviously I didn't do as good a job as Ryan when I put it
No,
back in the bag. So, but my lines are super long and my weights are like I've got 8 ounce weights.
Jesus, what are you
Yeah.
fucking? What are you?
Well, because I bought these for goose floaters.
6 ounce, bro.
No, I need it.
Yeah.
I got some strong wind. I need 8 ounces. So, anyways,
Well, that's so Phil, you bring up, we'll get there in a second. So
Yeah.
that's that mushroom style. Even if you want to just hold up one of them, yeah. See how that has that hard edge, right? So that's designed when it hits the bottom, and you can have, like, let's just say for conversation's sake, that you have 36 inches of water. You don't want a 36-inch rig. You don't want your rig bouncing straight up and down, right?
Mhm.
No.
You want the rig to come over and pull sideways, correct?
Well,
So that
bit of
hard
a
edge,
45.
yeah, or even it's like anchoring a boat in heavy wind or current. You have to have scope in the line, so the line has a bow in it. It's not straight, right? So that when that's pulling, it's pulling this way,
Yep.
and not bouncing. Okay, right? So the mushroom style is designed to roll over, not roll, and then when you pull on it, it's going to dig into the bottom. So technically, with a mushroom style, say you were originally running a 6 ounce, technically you could run a 4 ounce.
Oh,
So like
okay.
a normal teardrop bank sinker or another style weight, you could technically drop down a size because of that hard edge. The value of that flat style weight that we use on the timber rig is it doesn't have the hard edge, but it also isn't a teardrop bank sinker that can roll on hard bottom.
Yep.
So in the fishing environment, and all these different weight styles are originally from fishing, except for that mushroom. I think that's technically a decoy weight, but they're designed as mobile sinkers, designed so that when you're drift fishing, you can bounce along the bottom without getting caught. So your egg sinker, your teardrop bank sinker,
It's like running pencil lead.
correct.
Yeah.
Right. So when they're designed so that they don't get stuck on the bottom. To me, when I started building rigs and I saw some of the other items on the market that use egg sinkers or use a sliding weight, I'm like, this isn't designed. It's not going to pull the weight the correct way to lock it in to get it to actually bite into the bottom. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
So
makes total sense.
when you look at the different weight styles, so again, going back to it, a Texas rig for easy in EZ Dekes terminology is a fixed mushroom style weight. Timber rig is a flat bank style weight. And that flat banks is not going to grab the vegetation the same way the mushroom will.
Huh.
Now, this is the fun part of what I get to do and what I love about it. And I wind up spending more time talking to people than building rigs some nights is guys will ask me, what's the best rig? Well, there's a lot of questions I have to ask to figure out what the configuration that I would suggest for that, environment. Right. But there's no best, how everybody loves to write that. What's the best? It's what's the best for you. And one of my number one questions to guys, Phil touched on it earlier, you don't keel wrapping. I despise keel wrapping. I sell Little Macs because the guys love them here. I have a few ducks on them, really just what sits in my TDB and doesn't ever come out. But everything I do is Texas style rigs.
Mhm.
And the first question I ask is, how are you planning on organizing and storing your decoys? If you tell me you're using a mesh bag, and you just want to throw them in there, then Texas rig style is perfect for you, or you're going to have to keel wrap.
Yeah.
If you're going to use single slotted bags, my Texas rigs in my single slotted bags are up to 20 feet. So I just hand coil everything, throw it on the top of the bag, and zip the bag closed.
Yeah.
I don't deal with tangles. I'm not worried about that. Or there's a nice little knot to tie that you can lock it in and throw it over your shoulder. But the question I'm always asking guys are, what kind of rigging are you currently using? How much weight are you currently using? How long, or what's the average depth of the spots that you're hunting? And then I start asking them about the manufacturer of the decoy. Are we talking foam filled? Are we talking Magnum? Are we talking Super Mags? Are we talking standards? Are we talking teal? Are we talking puddle ducks? What, and then you can start to kind of pick and choose how much wind, how much current. And if I start to hear those, that's why Damien is using an 8 ounce. Phil, why you're getting away with a 3 ounce. I mean, I would say to you, Phil, why do you even need anchors? Just throw them in the water, I mean, as like a joke, but like I used to say that to guys down in the timber in Arkansas. If I hunted down there, I wouldn't even use weights. I would just throw them in the water,
Yeah, in fairness, like in the timber, there's no wind at ground level.
Yeah.
Like your decoys, like they'll muddle about a bit, but like they're not drifting away.
But up here on my standard ducks, everything's 8 ounce. All my geese are 12 or 16s.
Yeah.
Like you're dealing with current, big water, big movement.
And when the tide turns, it rips.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, it turns. The decoys could be 5 feet from you, and then the tide turns. Now they're 25 feet away from you.
Or even like I've hunted, I would call it our big water, like hunting North Shore Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
Shooting divers, and I've been out there shooting divers, and with my dog, have shot birds, and I've gone to send the dog, and it's a huge onshore wind, so we got the big rollers coming in, but that dead duck is ripping towards your side of the lake, and it's gotten to the point where I call the dog off, buddy, get back in here, you're not winning this battle. Like, it doesn't matter if that wind, like there's an underlying current that is ripping that dead bird to the other side of fucking.
Yeah, and it's even crazier. The wind's blowing at you, but the current's taking it the other way.
It's crazy how fast they can get pulled out.
Oh yeah. One thing I like to do when I do this show, and especially when we bring on people that talk about their products and stuff, and you sort of kind of talked about it, Ryan, when you said, someone will reach out to you and they'll say, well, what's the best configuration, and then you say, well, there's a lot of questions you need to answer, right? So that to me says, well, there's no umbrella rig that's going to solve everything. So if you're in fast moving water, or if you're in timber, like there's no rig that's going to take care of everything for you. So when you're listening to us talk about, when I say, well, I bought, 36-inch lines and 8-ounce rigs and stuff, listen, and this is really going out to the new hunter and the people that are really just getting their head wrapped around what waterfowl hunting is. I don't want you to think that you need to go out as much as Ryan wants you to come and buy 20 different rigs from him.
We strongly encourage that, though.
We strongly encourage it.
Strongly. I might get a free sticker.
You don't need. What I'm getting at is that, don't get caught up in the fact that, well, Damien bought 8-ounce rigs for his geese, Phil's got 3-ounce for his ducks, and I've got to start buying all these different. Listen, don't worry about that right now. If you're new to this, just get out there. Listen, for years, and Ryan, I know you probably did it. Phil, you probably did it, and Craig, I know you fucking did it because you're from Dunnville. How many of us just use paracord with some nuts and bolts tied off onto it? Because I know that's
Buddy,
what
I find brake rotors.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like where was that?
And I did it, right? So listen, it's awesome, and it's easy for me that I can come on this show and I can bring on my friends who's got these great products, and I buy them. But it wasn't always like that for me. I didn't always get the chance to be like, well, I need 8-ounce rigs with 36-inch lines, and I don't want monofilament. I want cable, because buddy, I love cable. Cable rigs are the absolute.
They're amazing. I'm just cheap, and I opted for the mono.
No, I bought cable rigs, and I'm going to tell you. And if you are a person that is a duck hunter, and the little things that make life just that much more comfortable for you, make the switch to cable rigs and go check out Ryan's cable rigs, because I'm going to tell you, they are slick, man. And I can't wait. Like I'm going out tomorrow. I got to rig them up tomorrow because I got to go hunt some geese tomorrow. But I've been dragging my ass on doing setting up the rigs. But um, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that, listen, if you're listening to this show and you're a brand new hunter, don't focus on having all the little things that we're talking about right here, right now, because it'll come in time. Just get out, get outdoors, get chasing some birds. You'll figure it out. And when you got an extra $50, well, then you'll pick up a new set of rigs. That's ultimately what I'm trying to get at here.
Damien, as much as I can appreciate that being a new hunter, I don't want to see guys go out and spend crazy money they don't need to spend.
Yeah.
But you asked the question. So I always tell people the number one thing is how things are going to change throughout your career as a hunter, right?
Yeah.
If you're kayaking in at first, if you're only going into places that you're wading into, those are all important facts, right? So I obviously deal with the extremes: salt water, tides, heavy current, heavy wind, open water. But the vast majority of the duck hunters out there, especially when you're talking about puddle ducks and things like that, we all know that puddle ducks are only going to be in a certain depth of water where they can battle, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question, there are some, and this goes back to kind of why some of the bigger players make only certain configurations, right? So those configurations are definitely kind of the 4x4, the 6x6, the 3x6, the 3x4, those kind of common sizes, common lengths, are kind of the newer hunter where you would want to be, right? I think the larger the decoy, the bigger the weight, especially when you have additional factors coming into play that you wind, current, whatever the case may be. But if you're a newer hunter and you're hiking in, and not to knock the paracord or the brakes or the nuts or the bolts or going and walking the train, and pulling pins that are on whatever, however you want to find weight and line, go for it. However, some things to think about: paracord is not an ideal product at all for any kind of application for rigging, because the material floats. Yes, you can find rot resistant material, but it floats. So you things to take into consideration. Personally, I ran a lot of mono for years. This was the first year that I actually finally, after 7 seasons of running my original rigs, I finally cut them up, took the weights off, took the snap swivels off, and I put it all on cable. And the reason I did that is I went from an 8-foot mono rig on most of my black ducks and some of my other, widgeon, gadwall, and some of my other puddle ducks that I hunt, because I want to run them long. What I like about the cable is that when that tide drops out, that cable sits flat on the bottom.
Yeah.
Cable's heavy.
It's heavier, so it actually weights itself down and pulls itself down to the bottom. I noted that last year hunting with a buddy that I had built rigs for, and I looked at it and I said, I've always kind of I just kind of just ran, I think Damien, I think I wrote to you the other day, I was like, I'm like the shoemaker. I build thousands of rigs a year, and I took 7 years for me to replace mine. That's not to try to pat myself on the back. It's because like every year I'd be like, oh, I'm going to replace them. I was telling the wife, like, she's like, I need pictures. I need you to take pictures of your stuff. And I'm like, I can't. Those are the original rigs. She's like, well, what's the difference? I'm like, there's not really. I used to just do like shrink wrap and this. And I used to do all this kind of extra crap for myself, which was so overkill. But then I finally sat down one night and I busted out 15 dozen for myself and re-rigged all of my spread. But going back to that new hunter, the best advice I can give you is if your depth is your waist, that you're comfortable, or your chest, give yourself 1 extra foot of material just in case that there's a hole or a spot. Okay. So, and then you also get the rig, especially from a Texas rig perspective, that rig actually slides into position correctly and is not bouncing on the bottom. And then if you have heavy current, you're going to need heavier weight, less current. So on your normal puddle duck, 4 to 6 ounce. On your geese, 6 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
Anything, if you're dealing with heavier currents, then you might want to bump up to 12 and or heavier than that. But for the most part, new guy to the sport, buy once, cry once. Don't believe what you read on social media that it's easier or cheaper to build it yourself by buying everything off Amazon. You first and foremost, the reason where 90% of the Texas rigs, homemade Texas rigs, fall apart is because guys aren't using the correct tools. They're taking, bench crimper, and they're not bench crimpers. They're not using a bench crimper. They're not using a hand crimper. They're using pliers. They're using channel, locks. They're using hammers. When you squeeze a crimp incorrectly, you're bending it incorrectly. You're creating stress points on it and then you're also marring up the line. So you see a lot of these guys are selling cheap vinyl, not PVC, coated cables. They're galvanized cables. I use stainless steel 3/16 American made. It's not cheap. It's quality stuff. But when you're using cheaper materials that you find on Amazon, thinking that you're saving yourself money, you're not, because you're going to wind up building it twice. And personally, even though I use I have a full-time job outside of EZ Dekes. I use all my personal time to build EZ Dekes. When I give away my time to do something, I want to get paid double what I get paid Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
I only get a Saturday and Sunday a week. So I always laugh when I read these comments like, "Oh, it's cheaper to do it yourself." No, it isn't when you take all things considered. So newer to the sport, you don't have to buy from me, but find a company, read the reviews, talk to your buddies, buy something, go a little bit longer than you think you need, and go a little bit heavier than you think you need. And you will have a rig that you can have for a long period of time as you kind of grow in the sport. And that's normally the advice I give most guys.
No, and that's sound advice, and advice that I throw out all the time is buy once, cry once as well. My point was mostly for the fellas that I'll put people in two different groups. There's the group of people that, well, I can do it cheaper, so I'll make it myself. And then there's the group that, listen, I don't have $50 to spend on a rig. I've got $20 to spend on a rig. So those are the guys that I'm sort of, and it's not to take anything away. And I know you don't think that. It's not that I'm trying to take anything away from your product. It's more, I want more people out hunting. And lately, over the last year and a half, Craig, Phil, we've talked about this, and I'd love to hear you guys chime in on this as well. But we have heard over the last year and a bit, 2 years, of this pressure that you need to be wearing a certain type of clothing. You need to have a certain pair of waders. You need to have a certain duck call. You need to have certain this, certain that in order to be successful, when that's all a crock of shit, because our grandfathers did it with, a piece of cork that, resembled the look of a duck, wearing the same clothes that they went to work with, and they still killed ducks. It doesn't, listen, it'll help you be a little bit more comfortable out in the blind, therefore you can, your shot is better and all that shit. But you don't need that in order to be a successful duck hunter. And that's what I'm getting at. When it comes time that you have the extra money, like where I am right now, then I buy this stuff now, because 5 minutes, I would much rather spend 5 minutes watching the world wake up and sip my coffee than I would to untangle the rat's nest of my decoys. And that's where I am in life right now. I wasn't always in that part. I always didn't have that luxury. So that very long-winded, but I know what you're saying, Ryan. I totally do. I totally get it. And it makes sense to me.
Damien, I thoroughly appreciate that. What you're saying too. When you're getting into this sport, it's daunting, right? I
Yeah.
mean, how to your point, from the pressures of social media of what to wear, what kind of bow, what gun, what ammo, all the it's in your face 24/7. And I think that's social media is to blame. And I think us as consumers, that's we've been trained and
Yeah.
conditioned to consume. And what's the best? We kind of joked around about that earlier, right? It's what works for you. I had
Yeah.
a long conversation with a buddy the other day. Um, you don't need any decoys, realistically. I know you
Yeah.
shake your head there, but if you
No,
scout,
I'm with you. I'm
if you,
fuck, I'm totally
if,
with you.
if you're brand new to this sport, the best thing you can do is first and foremost find somebody that will mentor you,
Yeah.
uh, that has some of the gear. Don't go out and spend it all at once. Realistically, don't go out. But even for a guy that's seasoned, I mean, jokingly, I said I hunt 90% of the time. I hunt under a half a dozen decoys.
Mm-hmm.
I've told you I built 15 dozen rigs, but 90% of this season I'm going to hunt with probably five. I like odd numbers, so I'll probably hunt with five decoys. So I know that's a start, but I
That's
hunt.
awesome.
But black duck don't want to see a big spread, or at least in my current area, they don't
Yeah.
want to see.
And
And
with your experience, yeah.
and my experience too is the biggest thing is doesn't matter. We joke around about this all the time. I think Busted Duck just did a whole big thing on this the other day. He's wearing like red and black camo. So you
Yep.
don't need fancy camo. Just don't move. Your hide. So if you're new to this sport, learn to sit still, learn to keep quiet, and get out with as many guys as you possibly can that will kind of show you the tips and tricks of what actually you really need to do. So no, I thoroughly appreciate what you're saying
Yeah.
about don't go out and just spend $50. I mean, I'd love for you to come and buy rigs for me, but I don't want to see somebody waste their money if they don't need to either.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's what a lot of
Yeah.
guests have said over the past year, right? It's like just get out.
yeah.
Whatever it takes for you to get out, whatever you can afford. And like even myself, like I've got in all branches of gear, whether it be the gun, the clothing, ammunition. It's like the only good stuff I have is stuff that I've won or is stuff that people have handed down or given to me or whatever, right? Because it's like I'm going to spend what money I've got on what I can just to get out. And yeah, like either you get to the stage where you've got the money to spend, or yeah, you know some people who help you out, or you win a bunch of contests. And just having that range of stuff too, right? Because you're going to be on those hunts where you don't necessarily want to have the good stuff out that's going to get beat up real bad, and just having that variety of stuff too is a good way to go.
Your
And
your
I do
best
have
investment is gas.
gas. Yeah, well, on the
Yes.
scout, yeah. I did want to throw in the disclaimer, and we should have something. We should have a banner underneath Craig every time he fucking talks. Is that, yeah, I win so many contests that I have all this shit. So,
Yeah.
like the guy's got a horseshoe up his ass. So, it's amazing the amount of shit that he wins. But no, you're right, Phil. And I don't want to make and fellas, I'm sorry, I didn't want to make this into a a point of what we're trying to tell a new hunter or a young person. I did that wasn't what my intent was. My intent was just to don't worry about spending quality money right now. Just get out there. That was really my intent here, and I didn't want to take away from anything else. So I appreciate what you guys are saying, but I think I may have led us down a path there where that was really getting away from what my point was. So I do appreciate it. But Ryan, you bring on some very good points because you I never realized th- I'll say the science for lack of a better term. But like I never thought about a lot of the things that you talked about when it comes to your rigging and making sure that it's not bouncing on the water and that your line isn't floating on that. Like I always knew it, but it was sort of like one of those subconscious things where yeah, well, I don't want my line, but I never really thought it through. Like I knew I didn't want my line to be floating on the top. I knew that I want my decoy to be, on a taut line, not on a slack line, right? So you bring up all of these things, which are great things, and I think there's a huge population of hunters out there that, and again, I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but I think there's a huge population of people out there that just go, like, just stay down the middle of the road, right? Like they don't, well, this is what Jimbo uses, and not Jimbo, Jim Ronquist. I mean, just lack of a better term, Joe and Charlie and Mike and Frank. This is what they use, so this is what I'm going to use. It doesn't always work out that way. And you touched on it, Ryan, because you have so many different things that you have to think about just with the tidal waters, the wind, the current, all of that stuff. So when it comes to looking at what it is that you need to buy, you need to not just go with the default answer, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and that's really kind of to Phil's point, and what we've found is kind of our sweet spot is just kind of being able to one answer those questions for guys that are interested in learning. I mean, there's a vast majority of the consumer base that is never going to ask the questions. They're going to hop on social media. They're going to type
Right.
into a group in the magnifying. They're not even going to have the gall to write a question because they know they're going to get plastered. But they'll write it in the magnifying glass, and they'll look up. And it's sad and frustrating for me as a smaller business still kind of growing in this space. A lot of people get Frank Hunt's X company because Joe hit, and then when you get down to figure out why they all hunt, it's because, I don't know, why did we all just start using this? Oh, we got a good deal on it one time on Rogers or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of products out there in the market that are pushed, in my opinion, from guys that really are just because it's either, I don't want to say fanboys, but I mean, there's a lot of products on the market, kind of what you alluded to earlier, that everyone's we got to wear this camo, got to wear that, got to shoot this gun, this ammo, this, because they're fans of the brand. And it's really just because of social media, right? Like someone asks, what's the best choke? You're going to get 35 answers, but in those 35 answers, I'll bet you there's one brand that's going to be kind of, rises to the top where the most people like that. And that could be group by group. I mean, we're in so many groups on Facebook, and I don't really chime in that often because I've gotten myself in trouble once or twice by saying too much. But you watch it, and it's like that group is fans of X brand, and then you go to the next one, and there's one of the biggest groups on Facebook. I mean, it has sponsors.
Oh, really?
Facebook. Now, granted, it's ran by a dude. It's not a public group as much as people think it is. Like, he has no qualms about saying, like, but he has sponsors. He on the back of it shows his sponsors, certain brands, and people have complained about it before. Other brands have complained that their posts never go up; they get deleted. So the only way that they communicate to that group is by in the comment section. So I that's the sad part. And I don't know if you met Keegan down in Louisiana, guys. I don't know if you know my buddy Keegan, but he's a big photographer, social media personality, does incredible media work for big game hunting as well as waterfowl. Travels the country. He's a nomad. All he does is film. Long story short, there's a conversation about what's going on currently behind the scenes, and a lot of guys are talking about how it's just build more products and get the consumer and the customer to buy more stuff. It goes back to that story about Justin earlier. I mean, granted, there's more products that we want to introduce in due time, but it's never been about that. It's about creating products that last, that do what they say. And when I say give you an edge in the field, it actually does, right? It's
Yeah.
not just kind of blowing smoke up your ass with good marketing. So you know, I hope that there's a shift in the mindset of the hunter as well as some of the other big brands out there, that we're not just going to produce and make you buy a new pair of waders every year and a new jacket every year and a new gun case every year. And I mean, because let's be honest, we touched earlier on just the planet itself. We can't keep consuming this way, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, can't just keep buying shit. So I want to do my part in kind of creating products that you know you're not going to have to replace and that you tell all your buddies about. So I know kind of a weird full circle. I think it's important that we just as hunters take that into consideration too, because I mean, you talk about those old timers hunting over foam and wood decoys. That was part of the sport, was doing that stuff in the off season. So earlier when you touched on something, and I thought you were going in that direction. There's two. I look at it as you have two different people. Some people that just don't have the time, don't have the know-how to create their own products, their own rigging. Then you have another group of people that have to do it out of necessity. But in that same group of people that have to do something necessity, there's a group of duck hunters out there that enjoy that part of the sport, right?
Yeah.
I built my own rig. I built my own decoy. I built my own decoy rig. I built my own long lines. I built my own spreader bars. They wanted to create their own products, right? Because that to them is what duck hunting is all about. And frankly, that is what duck hunting is all about. It's not, you know, pile picks and all that other crap. To me, why I started building decoy rigs, why I still build decoy rigs, is because I actually enjoy it. It's therapeutic for me, you know. So there's two sides to that too. So I'm all for guys coming to me and buying their material through me.
Right.
So I'm happy to do that as well. So kind of just, you know, kind of went a little bit in either direction there, but it's all about just approaching the sport the way you want to, right? And I think creating your own stuff is cool. And personally, I think to me, it makes that hunt that much better. You know, if you're hunting over something that you actually
100%.
right. I wish I had the ability to carve. I'm jealous of all these guys on there that are carving their own decoys and whatnot. But you know, I think the mindset of the duck hunter has to change a lot too.
Yeah.
And kind of focus a little bit differently.
No, absolutely, buddy. And you know, and I don't mean to cut you off, but we're about 90 minutes into it here right now. So I think that's a good point to shut it down here now. And you know what? Obviously good conversation. So that means you got to come back on the show again. So
Yeah,
that
no,
we
sorry if I got a little long-winded there.
No, it's good. It's
you know,
no, it's
I lost track a little bit, but you know, I would love to anytime come on with you guys and just shoot the shit about duck hunting, because I think what I've learned in the last 6 years of really being involved in this sport, there's 1,000 different ways to do it. And there's so many people that think that they have the right idea or my way is the best way.
Yeah.
And it's comical because what may work for me would never work for someone out in the Pacific Northwest.
That's right.
You know?
No, absolutely. And I did want to just put this disclaimer out here as well. You know, when we're talking about you need to buy this or you need to buy, hey, listen, I make my money on sponsorships. Or Punisher makes its money on sponsorships. So we have brands that we believe in, but I will never tell you that if you don't have brand, if you're not using Real Geese, Ducklander Calls, or First Light, then you shouldn't hunt. That I will never do. But I'm telling you that if you want what I feel is the top end, then that's the stuff you use, if that makes sense. Anyways, I did want to put that out there because I didn't want anybody thinking that I'm somewhat of a hypocrite, because that's the last thing I want. anybody thinking. We will do a quick round the table, and we will give last words to you, Ryan, buddy. So Craig, I know you didn't get to chime in much tonight, but first to you, my man.
I just want to touch on two things. So with
Yep.
Ryan talking about like comments and groups and stuff like that, and everybody always being like, you got to use this or this one's crap. One thing I want to put out there to people is if you're going to comment, if somebody's asking a question, just take a second. And if you're going to take the time to comment, provide something else. Don't just say, yeah, it's crap or this one's
Yeah.
good. Because I think there's just a lot of those kind of legacy impressions, right? Like, yeah, somebody started off with this brand and that's all they've ever used or whatever. They're not basing their comment on anything. So if you're going to say something, have some basis for it. Like, provide some info. Like, okay, yeah, this is crap. Here's the experience. Like,
Yeah.
provide some information.
Yeah.
And the second thing was I wanted to do a bit of a retraction, I think it's called. So the last time I was on, remember I said we were talking about wetlands and all that, and I threw out some information and I said I could be wrong. I was totally wrong. So I had things inverted. So I found the information that I was talking about, like with diversity in wetlands and comparing them to rainforest. So I found the information. So I just, for anybody who listened and thought maybe I was bullshitting, I totally was. I had the information wrong. So the information I got here is wetlands are hugely diverse, and they have not only to waterfowl, but over 600 species of wildlife. And when I talked about species at risk, a third of Canada's species at risk rely on wetlands for at least part of their life cycle. So I wanted to throw that out there, and the comparison to tropical rainforest was in them holding carbon. So the carbon sink aspect of wetlands is larger than tropical rainforest, and wetlands only take up 6% of the Earth's surface, which I think I had that number right, but the rest of it was I had it all inverted in that. So I wanted to clear that up for everybody in case anybody was really worried about it.
Congratulations to anybody that listened to that episode and have stuck around long enough to get the retraction from Craig. Congratulations. Thanks, buddy. Philly, to you, my man.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it simple. Ryan, you make great rigs.
Philly's got to watch Grey's Anatomy, so
don't get me started. But if you're looking for decoy rigs, hit up Ryan. If you don't know what you need, message Ryan as opposed to just ordering fucking blindly.
Yeah.
Or message myself, message Damien, because like obviously you can point you in the right direction as to your type of hunting and what you need. But
I'm totally going to send them to Ryan.
100%.
Yeah.
But Ryan is the man to see because he's got different weights, different colors, different strings, different weights. Like he's the man to buy the rigs from.
Yeah. No, makes sense. Hey, listen, you got a question? Go to the expert. Don't ask us yahoos. Yeah. Ryan, to you, my man.
We have no idea what the hell we're doing.
Yeah. Not medicated. Ryan?
No.
First and foremost, thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on here. I really do. Dude. It's been fun kind of chit-chatting with you guys through social media for a few years at this point, right?
Yeah. Pen pals.
Pen pals, as we call it. But yeah, it's duck hunting is supposed to be fun. Don't let people get in your way. If I could tell anybody, just have fun. If you got questions, don't be ashamed to just ask. I don't actually consider myself a pro or an expert. I've made a couple jokes. I'm just like you guys. I was sitting in the same exact kind of chair at one point, just trying to consume everything waterfowl to learn and kind of pick up as much as I possibly could. But a lot of it is just common sense. Just go out there, have fun, enjoy yourself, and let's make this season the best season we possibly can. Remember that just because you can doesn't mean you should. Be respectful, because the rights that we have today and the opportunities we have could easily be taken away. And frankly, that scares me as of trying to build this business really for my two boys. I want to be able to, one, get old and be able to duck hunt, and I want them to be able to duck hunt. So go out there and do it right. Remember that there's always a kind of a magnifying glass on us, and have fun, enjoy.
Absolutely. And a good note to end on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 208 of the Union 0430 podcast. As always, we're not experts. We'll never pretend to be. We're just a bunch of dudes that love sitting around, hanging out, and talking duck hunting. Be safe. Surround yourself with good people. Until next time, big love.